The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord. Let us read together while we're standing, sing creed. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. More important. What's more important?
Sometimes we just get excited, don't we? It was your turn to be confused. Mine was earlier. Today's reading from the Gospel comes end of the first day. The women have gone to the tomb early in the morning, as we read from Mark on Easter Sunday, and they have the tomb empty. And two young, robed in dazzling clothes, tell them Jesus is not there. He has gone ahead to Galilee, Galilee. And they go running back, and they tell all of the other disciples who are gathered there, and they don't believe him. But Peter decides he needs to check it out. And so he goes back, and he does find exactly what they said. The tomb is empty. Unfortunately, the young men in white clothes have, and so he doesn't get the same message. Later on that day, the people who were gathered in that upper room are walking to Emmaus, which is why I started to read that lesson. And Jesus joins them on the trip. They are lamenting what has happened over these last few days. Jesus is gone. Yeah, they heard what the women said. Like I said, nobody believed them. They heard that Peter said it was empty. Who knows why? And so they're down. They're just low. And Jesus comes and asks them, what's going on? Why are they so sad? And they look at him like he has two heads. And he said, are you the only person in Jerusalem that doesn't know what's happened in the last 3 days? Are you the only? And so they tell him all that has happened. And Jesus begins to explain to them why this had to happen. Going back in scripture, we don't get the whole story. Luke decided not to write all of the Old Testament in this chapter. But he tells them what they heard, and they begin to feel a little better. They get to Emmaus where they're going, and they say, please come and have dinner with us. You know, it's getting late in the day. You really shouldn't be on the road. It's dangerous. Come and stay with us. He goes into their home, and they're having a meal, and during the meal, he takes the bread, he breaks it and blesses it. And suddenly they go, anybody sees the risen Lord. He disappears, and they race back to Jerusalem. Note, they're not worried for their own at this point. Being after dark is gone. They have to tell the disciples what they've seen. Telling the story to the disciples when Jesus says with you. And I can't imagine what it must have been like to see Jesus. But apparently Jesus understands that they all think he's a ghost. He can't possibly be real. We all know that doesn't happen, right? So it can't be real. And Jesus begins to say, okay, so see my hands, you can touch me, bones, flesh, it's all there. I'm talking to you. Goes through all these tests for how you know something's not a ghost. Tests for that, people. And finally, anything to eat? And they kind of look at each other and say, here's some fish. And he eats, and that's like the final test. But there's a line in the gospel that says, joy. Ever had one of those moments imagine would have happened, or what you hoped for more than anything else, but now that it's here, you just can't believe it really happened? And you kind of get that funny, lot of kind of giddy feeling, like, I don't know what's going on here, but okay, we're going to do this. My sense is that that's the way they felt. It was like, well, he's here. We know he's eating. But you know, my mind is telling me that this is crazy. They seem to lack what we call faith. As I was doing my study for this sermon this week, I was reading several things. And one of the things I read is that there's another word for faith. It's one we know and understand. It's called trust. Trust and faith are one and the same. So, for instance, if you're reading the lesson from Acts, it says, find the line here, and by faith in his name, and strong, and by trust in his name, this man has been made whole. And again in the Psalm, it talks about faith and says, know that the Lord does wonders for those who trust, for the faithful, for those who put their trust in the Lord. We all know that we love God. We love God. We try to walk our best in the path that Jesus has shown us. We have a great deal of hope for that which will come, which is the kingdom here on earth. And we trust that the work we do helps to bring that about. But the question I kept asking myself this week was, do we trust God? Do we trust in the Lord? Well, I don't know about you all, but one of well, they said it a lot in the 80s, and some people still say it is, I just give it all up to God. You know, I just say my prayers and I give it all up to God. The question is always, what do you do when God gives it back? What do you do when God says, you've got this, I've got your back, why are you telling me? We have to trust that God will walk with us and see us through whatever it is we want to give up. We want to get it out there. That's off my plate. It's yours, God. Good luck. And God says, no, I can't do this by myself. I need you to, you're my hands and feet. You're my mouth. Speak to these people. Say something, do something, go somewhere, touch somebody in my name, through trust in my name. I began reading Bishop Curry's new book this week, and I'm going to paraphrase him because he also talks about faith and trust being one and the same. So when he's talking about that passage from 1 Corinthians when Paul says, faith, hope, and trust, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Faith, hope, and love. He says, read it as trust, hope, and love. And the thing about trust and hope and love is that you can't have one without the others. You can't just have love, that's enough, that'll sustain me, unless you have trust. Think about relationships you know that have broken. How often have they broken because trust is gone? How often do we stop trusting somebody because of something they have said and done that has hurt the love between us, or that has taken away the hope and left us in despair? How often do we trust, even though, like the disciples, we're just not sure that that's what we need to do? We trust our government, don't we? And yet every single one of us doesn't really trust our government. Some. It's kind of like when I say, God, I know that this is not mine to take on. This is not mine to do. I need you to help me. But let me tell you how you're going to do that. Let me explain to you how it is that I want you to take this on. This is Christian splaining, I suppose, to the Lord, saying, yes, I know you're God. I know you to be with me, to take care of me, but here's how I want it to go down. God rarely does what I want in those cases. And sometimes it really goes south because I keep putting myself in God's place. Trust is critical to love. There really can be no total love, that agape love that God calls us into in our relationship with God, if there is no trust. Bishop Curry says, trust dares us to believe that in the end, love wins. We can't see it anyway. And it's that can't see it part that'll get us every time, that stops us in our tracks, because we love proof and we want it right here. Show me. And God says, you're just going to take it on trust, folks. And we don't want to say, okay. We want to say, well, could you give us a sign? Could you give us a little miracle maybe? Could you just do a little something? I don't know. Turn water into wine. Something that shows that our trust is not misplaced. The disciples, once Jesus had appeared to them, understood trust. Peter and John, who went to the temple to say their prayers and saw this man who had been lame for eons, trusted that God was with them and that God would act through them to heal the man. And everybody who saw it said, how'd that happen? I'm not believing that one. No way, forget it. And Peter said to have trust in the Lord. Now, I don't know why things happen even when we think we are trustful, but they do. And I wish I had an answer for that. But you see, the other thing that Luke doesn't tell us is that when Jesus opened the minds of his disciples and explained the scriptures, nobody wrote down. We have to trust that what they said, what they did, what once at Pentecost and even before occurred, we have to trust that they were acting through God, that they were being what we, the hands, the feet, kingdom, heavenly kingdom, where we will always be in God's love and we will trust absolutely, completely.
Well, I was standing